Hey class, good to see you again, even though I can't really see you. Anyway, this week we're going to be doing some 2-point perspectives. Now, good job on the 1-point perspectives. I think you guys got a good start on that. There's a few things. This is trickier to learn. There's kind of a right and wrong way to do it, unlike some of the other things in art. There's a system, sort of mathematical in that sense. What I'm going to encourage you guys to do is go back and read the comments I made for you and your classmates, not just you, but your classmates also in Schoology, because there's some kind of consistent errors that students tend to make, and if you read the comments from your classmates, you can kind of avoid those common typical errors in the on the next assignment. So the main difference between 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective is your view of the box or house or building kind of changes. So in a 1-point perspective, the closest part of the house or building is always the front face like this. If you kind of look at that from last week, you'll notice the closest part to you is this face right here. Okay, that changes in a 2-point perspective, whereas the scene is kind of rotated such that the closest thing to you is always a corner, and then you have orthogonals going towards 2 separate vanishing points, one on the right and one on the left, hence the name 2-point perspective. So without further ado, shall we get started? Alright, first thing I want to do here is just fix the thing that I had made a mistake on last week. Just don't want to lead you guys astray. Some of you guys might have noticed that this dormer here doesn't look quite right. And that's because it can't sit on the roof quite like that. This diagonal here has to meet up with this corner if it's going to be laying on the flat on the house rather than sticking out. I guess it could stick out, but that's just not how they actually work. So we'd have to go like this. From this corner, have a line that's parallel to the roof diagonal. It's going to make the dormer a little bit smaller, and then we'll just follow this so it's parallel to the other diagonal, and then just kind of erase that out. So a couple of you guys tried those dormers, and some of you guys even did it right, so good on you. Doesn't that look better? Just wanted to clear that up for you. And here's what they might look like more in a drawing. Egads, that's detailed, isn't it? See what you could do if you put the time and energy in, right? I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've kind of upped my recording game here by sneaking into the high school and grabbing the document camera. So hopefully it's a little easier to see because we won't have the perspective distortion on the edges of the paper like you saw perhaps in the last video. Anyway, moving across to the vocabulary desk, we're going to learn a couple more words for the quiz. The first one, hopefully you already understand this, but is vanishing point. I'm going to spell that right. So vanishing point. That's the point where the converging lines meet on the horizon. Here's the vanishing point. Here are the converging lines. VP. The next one is an orthogonal. And the orthogonals are the lines that are converging towards the vanishing point, like so. This last one, I'm going to write down the whole definition for you. And this is a different kind of perspective. Now, we're probably not going to use this in the project that we do, but I want you to be aware of it so you know there's more than one type of perspective technique in drawing. This is called atmospheric perspective. And this refers to the tendency for things that are closer to you to appear darker and more distinct, and things that are farther to appear lighter and less distinct. I'm going to make a distinction between the words further and farther right now. Farther refers to distance. Further refers to understanding. So for further understanding, I'm going to draw a little picture of some mountains here where the front mountains are nice and dark, but the mountains farther away in distance are going to be a little bit lighter. And that picture's not that good, so let's go ahead and switch over and show you some actual pictures of this concept. You can almost see it on the desktop of my computer. This is the default desktop for Mac OS Catalina, which is the newest version of their operating system. You can see this first island is pretty distinct. It's detailed, and back here it's kind of faded. But I've got some better images to illustrate this for you. See, these ones are the darkest in the foreground, and because there's more atmosphere between your eyes and the horizon, the things tend to get lighter. If you were in a dusty room where the light was streaming through the windows, you might even see this effect in an interior space. Here's another mountain one. It's pretty obvious that these closer ones are darker than the distant ones. Here's an artist's rendering of like a robot kicking up dust. So there's more atmosphere actually in the space, and these silhouettes of these human faces in profile are darker in the foreground. You might see this effect of atmospheric perspective being more pronounced in an urban setting like a city where there is smog and pollution or more particulate matter in the atmosphere. And here's another artist's rendering of kind of like a misty, foggy forest where the closer trees are darker and this fountain in the trees that are farther away are lighter. And another artist rendering where these cool statues also have much more detail. You can kind of see the carved sections of the ones in the foreground. But way back here, you can't see anything. They just kind of fade into the distance like that. So that's atmospheric perspective. As usual, I like to show you guys also the typed version of those, so you can pause and catch up on your notes, get a definition of the first two words, vanishing point, orthogonals, and atmospheric perspective, so you have those for the quiz. All right, pause, and I'll be right back. All right, speaking of the quiz, let's review a couple of the terms from last time, just to make sure you're ready for that when we take it next week. So by now you should know this red line is the horizon line. You always keep that in your picture too. Some of you guys erased it later in the drawing last time. You never erase it, only if it's being overlapped or covered by an object or a building. Otherwise you leave it there so you can distinguish between the sky and the ground. And then you've got, of course, a horizontal, which is always going to run perfectly parallel to your horizon here. You've got your orthogonal, which is the one we learned today that points at the vanishing point. There's another orthogonal right here and another one right here, and the vanishing point itself, as well as a vertical that's going to run perpendicular to the horizon. So you got a vertical here, a vertical here as well. So that's a little bit of a review before the quiz next week. You guys did a 1-point perspective last time. You can do other things in 1-point perspective. Sometimes when we had the luxury of being in school, I'd take my students down to the hallway and we try to draw the scene here, which is a 1-point perspective. And let me just quick kind of break this down for you. If I was to draw the horizon line, that would be somewhere out here. Now you wouldn't really see it because it's outside of the school building, but it's still there, and you still need to draw it to do a perspective drawing. Then we can kind of follow some of these orthogonals, and you can just pick a few of them. Whoops, let me shift gears here. Just pick a few of them, like this nice strong one right here. And let's say And there's a pretty strong one right there. We'll just do one more for good measure. You start to see the idea here, though. They're all converging at the same point. So this happens in reality. It's not just something that we're making up here. And of course, the point where they converge is at the vanishing point in there. So that's kind of how that would look. So if you try to draw an interior scene in one-point perspective, it might look something like this. This is one I did with my students one day when we did a sketchbook sketch together. If you get really good at this, you can even tweak things and kind of break the rules a little. So this is like a subway scene in London. I can tell because they're at Wimbledon Station, and there's the underground symbol. Anybody's ever been to London or goes there someday, you'll see that. The horizon here, though, is not horizontal. It's kind of canted or at an oblique angle. So this makes things kind of difficult. What you'll notice, though, is that the vertical lines are still at a 90 degree. So this subway here, if we make a vertical line here, is still at a 90-degree angle here if we made the little angle symbol there. So this is, even though it's not vertical on the page, it's vertical relative to the horizon line. And we could do the same thing with this scene. If we were to follow some orthogonals, we could find where they all sort of converge on the horizon line is going to be where our vanishing point lies. So you can kind of break down a scene like this and figure out whether someone did it in 1-point or 2-point perspective. This is a 1-point perspective, but we're moving on to 2-point perspective. So again, 1 point, you see the flat face of a structure closest to you. In a 2-point, you see the corner as the closest thing to you. I also want to remind you that the position of the horizon dictates how you see an object. This is like your eye line, your level at which, vertical level at which you're seeing the world. So if there's something above you, you'd see the bottom of it. If there's something below you, you'd see the top of it, like that. That's an important distinction to make when drawing a perspective, because the very first thing you do is draw the horizon, and where you put the horizon is going to kind of change your viewpoint on the whole world like that. And here's a house in 2-point perspective. Now we're not going to draw a house today, but I just thought since we drew one last time, you could kind of see this is an architectural rendering of a house. Obviously, you put a little bit more time and effort into it than we have so far. You can make a pretty sophisticated look at drawing, and you can tell this is a 2-point perspective because, of course, the corner is the closest thing to us. So if we were to break this thing down, I'm actually going to start with orthogonals with this guy here and find the corner here and kind of go like this. And what I'll find actually is that my vanishing point, there's 2 of them, but they're actually not even on the page. They're off the page. And there's a problem in linear perspective drawing called distortion, whereas if you have the vanishing points too close together, you can get this kind of strange distorted look. So if we chase this to the end here, you'll notice all of these converging lines or orthogonals end up outside off the page, like way out here somewhere. The perspective distortion, by the way, it looks kind of like this in a 2-point. If the points are too close together in the middle of the page, you get the bottom edge kind of poking out too far, and it looks a little distorted or strange like that. So we're going to try to avoid that, and we're going to start drawing. There's my camera. Let's go full screen. So see if I'm in focus. Looks pretty decent there. We're not going to put the vanishing points off the page like you saw in that example of the house I showed you a second ago, but we're going to put them as far apart as possible. So we're going to start with the horizon line fairly low like this. Get this guy out of the way like we did last time. So it's going to make our viewpoint low on the world. If you want this to work out, try to kind of do the things the way I do. I think it'll work a little better for you. Some of you guys ran out of room because of where you started the house last time, or where you put the vanishing points. So don't put them too close to the center. We're going to actually put them as far as we can, given the piece of paper we have, which is going to be right on the edge. Even though I know you can say, oh, Lynn, I can find the edge of the paper. That's where the horizon hits, just draw them anyway to be intentional about it. So you got 2 vanishing points, VP, VP. And we're going to do kind of the classic exercise that often you do in a school class when you're learning 2-point perspective. Let's label that, by the way. Let's say 2-point perspective. And this is an exterior, a view from the outside as well, just like last time. And please write that on there to remind you and be intentional. It helps you remember things when you write them down. So we're going to start the edge of the first building here. By the way, the classic example of a 2-point perspective drawing that I alluded to a second ago is like a street corner with buildings and that sort of thing. So we're going to do the first building. We're not going to put them right in the center because Mr. Lin doesn't like symmetry that much. Sometimes, but not in this case. We're going to just move a little bit right of center, and then we're going to make a vertical line. Okay, that's the corner of the building. Now from the top and bottom, remember I'm going to do this kind of fast, but you guys have the luxury of being able to pause and then do what you need to do and then catch up. So from the top and bottom of that line, I'm going to make orthogonals that go towards both the right and left vanishing points like this. And how long you make these determines how large the building would be. So I'm just going to make it about like that. I'm going to do that on this side as well, kind of like so. Notice I'm not just aimlessly putting these anywhere, I'm putting them right here. Sometimes it helps people to use their pencil as an anchor point on one end and then just move the ruler to make sure it's hitting that side. So in a 2-point perspective, there actually are only vertical lines and orthogonals. Nothing's going to be horizontal in this case. So all the lines either have to go here or here. If they go somewhere else, you probably made a mistake. And speaking of mistakes, another common one that students often make is to go like this and just connect these 2 lines. That would be incorrect though, because this is a vertical line, and as Miss McPhee tells us, all lines on the same plane have to go the same direction. In this case, the same vanishing point. In this case, they both have to be vertical like this. So this one, to be correct, you'd have to cut this off with a vertical line, which requires a little bit of erasing. That's why we always start out kind of lightly in a perspective drawing and then go dark later so it can be seen better. We don't want to always keep it light, but we start light. So this one I'm going to cut even shorter, and now I have this little tag and this little tag that I need to erase. So I'm not just connecting those, I'm cutting off with a vertical line that's going to be parallel to the original vertical, or again 90 degrees perpendicular to the horizon line. So next thing we're going to do is erase the horizon, but only where the building covers it. Again, last time some of you guys erased your horizon line completely, which looks strange because then it looks like your house is just kind of floating in the middle of nowhere. You have to have the earth to kind of ground the whole scene like this. So what else can we do? Let's add another building that's kind of farther away back here, and it's sort of a different size. So you guys note that how big or tall you make these initial lines sort of determines the rest of the shape of the building. Sorry, I'm going to try to slow down and keep my page horizontal, even though I'm resisting the urge to turn it because it's just easier to draw my lines. I think it's easier for you guys to follow if I keep it this way. So doing the same thing we did a second ago. And since the initial vertical is straddling the horizon, you see neither the top or roof of the building or the bottom. Okay, so this is going to kind of come back down like so. This is going to be sort of a shorter, flatter building. So we're going to do a vertical and a vertical like so. Do the necessary erasing work for the horizon where the building covers it, and the little tag ends, so we kind of got a couple of structures hanging out here like this. So we could do what we did with the last drawing with the 1-point perspective, where we cut out a little opening in the front. Maybe there's like a doorway or something in this building. So we're going to do a couple verticals like this, decide how wide that's going to be. It would be tempting to just connect those, but that would be a common mistake. What we want to do is use the vanishing point always. So we're going to go like this, and then if we find that we need to add on to a little bit of that line, like this to make sure it meets, then we can do that if necessary. Okay, then just break out the bottom of that space with your eraser, and we're going to go back and do, make this look like it's inset or three-dimensional. And a real common mistake I noticed in those one-point perspectives is when people were doing a window, they just kind of like forgot about the perspective technique and abandoned it completely. They would just make like a line like this. The problem with that is that line's going way up here, and our vanishing point is way down here. So don't make it harder on yourself and just guess where lines go. You only have two choices, 1 or 2, and we see like this side of the building, so inside of here we'd see that same side. So if we know that these orthogonals are going to the left vanishing point, then inside here this orthogonal would also have to go towards that vanishing point like that. And then depending on how deep you want to make that, you just cut it off the vertical, and this guy just has to follow suit. This same face here is the same, side of the building as this, so this has got to go to this vanishing point over here. I realize I'm not keeping my paper level. It's just too hard for me to do it, guys, but I'll straighten it out for you guys like this, and then show you that that line right there does indeed line up with that vanishing point. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second. All right, I'm going to make a quick analogy, because I think when we do these drawings, I think it's pretty easy often for students to get the first kind of block down. But then when it comes to adding blocks and putting things together, it becomes a little more complex. But really what it is, you're just kind of repeating the same thing again and again. So you draw the first block, right? And then you're going to just add another block. You already drew one block, so you know how to draw another one. You just kind of have to know where to start it, which is what I'm going to show you in a sec here. And then if you have two blocks next to each other, you put another block on top, and then maybe another block on top of that. So really we repeated the same thing 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but we put it together, so instead of just this simple single shape, we have a combination of shapes that makes something like a little bit more complex and interesting. So let's try to do some 2D Legos on paper here. Some blocks. Let's just put something on top of this one here. So let's try, instead of like a short flat thing, let's make kind of a tall skinny thing like this. So it always starts with the vertical. Remember, that's the front corner or leading edge. Sorry, trying to keep it straight so it's easy for you guys to follow. So this is lining up with the vanishing point here, and the top of that vertical coming down kind of like that. And then let's just do one side at a time for variety's sake this time. And we're going to make a vertical like that. So this guy, move this over so you can see from the top there, is going to come all the way over to this vanishing point right here. And we'll make this a little bit longer, something about like that. Okay. Then we'll cut that off again right here with the vertical. So we got kind of this like taller shape projecting from the shorter shape. And maybe we want to do something kind of similar to what we did here. We'll do it here and make it go all the way through. So we'll do a couple verticals like so. We're going to come all the way back to our right vanishing point here, line it up with one of these two things. I'm going to do this one, so that'll cut it off like that, and all I have to do is erase the little thing like this. And now in this case, this is going to look a little bit different than this, because now we are above the horizon. Remember, our horizon is kind of like our eye line, our viewpoint in terms of height on the world. So if this is above our eye line, now we're going to see actually the underside of it. So come to this vanishing point, come in with a short orthogonal, and then from that orthogonal, since this is a 2-point, we can't do a horizontal here. We got to come all the way back to this vanishing point right here and go like this, and just kind of finish that little guy off with a vertical here. Sort of looks like l'Arc de Triomphe or something in Paris on the Champs-Élysées, which is a famous street down the middle of the city of Paris. Paris, I should say. What else could we do? One of the best ways to show some depth and distance beyond just perspective is to do some overlapping. Right now we've got kind of these two buildings that are sort of side by side. This one's a little further back in space, farther I should say. But we're going to add another building. Let's see, let's put this guy, start him right about here. Okay, and then that's going to kind of cut back like this to that VP, and then this guy is going to be going behind this other building like so. Okay, and then we got to make sure we start below the horizon. This is still on the ground here, so I got my vanishing point lined up on the right side, and then just above this, like right about here, notice my orthogonal is approaching horizontal because it's close to the horizon, but it's still horizontal. It's still orthogonal line. It's not horizontal. Now, it kind of looks like you'd see this building through this hole here, so we either need to do a vertical there to cut it off, or I think I'm going to make it even longer. Instead, I'm going to just kind of continue this guy like so, and then drop the vertical down so it looks kind of like a large building back there. So now this appears to be in front of this. Okay, let's do a couple other things to this. Let's say there's kind of like a projection. So I'm just going to remember our Lego analogy. We're going to stack a block on top of this one. So I'm just going to add to this with like two vertical lines like there, and then erase this so it looks like this is a continuation of that surface or that plane. And then I'm going to cap this off like that. Notice I'm going to cut both of these off just to make it a little shorter and erase both of these tags like that. And then I'm going to come back like this to this vanishing point, not very far, but just a little ways like that, and then do a vertical so it looks like there's kind of like this sort of chimney-like structure extending from there. Let's try that on this side too, just for fun. Try it again on the other side and see if we can maybe pause the video right now, like Sal Khan does in his math videos. If you ever done Khan Academy, he says, I encourage you to pause the video now and try this and then see if it works out. So you pause the video, see if you can do the same thing only on the other side of the building. So like this. Just repeating this same process we did just a second ago. And then like so. So this building, once was simple, is starting to become a little bit more interesting and complex because it's got these other blocks or shapes kind of added to it. Let's see if you can cut out like a window or something like that on this side. So we're going to do a vertical like this. Do a couple orthogonals to the left side vanishing point over here like this. And I believe since we're above the horizon, again, you're actually going to see the upper edge of the window. Okay, but we're on this side now, and since we're seeing the inside of there, we got to come back towards the right side vanishing point. So I'm lining this little short line is not going to be very long, but it still has to use the vanishing point. Let's try to avoid that mistake this time of not using it even on a little window line like that, or else it just won't look right. So this one too also use the vanishing point. Note that I found that corner. So I'm lining up with my VP, and then I'm coming back like this. So it looks kind of like there's this little inset window, and we can see this ledge here because our eyesight is down here at the horizon level, below the horizon. So the last thing I'm going to add to this scene is just kind of give it a little more context. It's kind of the classic thing is make it look like this is like on a street corner or something like that. So what we're going to do is add a sidewalk. So the way we do that is just all the way from the vanishing point. Actually, in this case, we're going to draw a line to about there, and then do the same thing starting at that corner back to the left side vanishing point. Okay, so we're going to kind of elevate this sidewalk by just doing a teeny vertical like this, and then repeating the process, rinse and repeat. We're going to go all the way back like so, and then all the way back again, left side vanishing point. Okay, it doesn't look too much like a sidewalk, it just looks like a platform at the moment, but if you want to make it look like a sidewalk, what we do Let's take the front edge of this building that we already have a line for, line that up with the vanishing point, and just kind of continue that guy out this way, and do the same thing on this side. There I go again, turning my paper. Just easier to turn your paper sometimes than to turn your brain, guys. Okay, so now it looks a little bit more like a sidewalk, but it's missing an important thing, like the separations of the different slabs of cement on the sidewalk that are supposed to keep it from kind of buckling and cracking when it, due to the freeze and thaw and the changing of the seasons in the winter and stuff like that. It doesn't always work. Sometimes they crack anyway, but watch this now. I'm just going to simply hold my ruler or my pencil right here, put the ruler up against it, and then pivot the ruler, and then I'm going to estimate how big to make the next kind of sidewalk square like that. And then in theory this would get smaller and smaller. The space between these, I should say, would get smaller and smaller the farther away they get. Now there is actually a formula called perspective spacing that I could teach you to do this, but I'm not going to get into that right now. We're just going to kind of use our intuition and make these look like they're getting closer and closer and closer together. Real common mistake for kids to just start making lines like this or something, but here, if I made a line like this, let me do it wrong actually on this side so you can see what's wrong with just kind of aimlessly being like, oh, I'm just going to do some lines like this, and you can kind of see like suddenly that sidewalk doesn't look right. It looks like it's kind of warped or it's turning on its side, and that's because these lines that are supposed to be orthogonals are actually just shooting aimlessly into the sky in different directions and stuff. They have to be going to this vanishing point, so don't make that common mistake. Come in here, take the time to do it right, and use your vanishing point for every line you make here. So here's the orthogonal, or sorry, here's the vanishing point right here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw these guys like this, kind of do my estimate of how much smaller it would be the next time, and then keep going on that, and if you'll find if you just keep doing it, they'll get closer and closer together, and within, you know, a few of these lines, they'll be so close together that it'll just kind of look like they disappear into the distance. Let me finish that on this side. I noticed the light on this dock camera doesn't seem to pick up that well when my hands are in the way. It changes the exposure, and then when I move them you can see it again better, so I apologize for that. It's the trade-off, I guess, for using this instead of my computer cam. Alright, let me hold it still there for a sec so you can kind of see those. And then to finish off the sidewalk, what you want to do is make these vertical lines like this. So little tiny vertical lines. Took this guy a little farther, didn't I? A little vertical line at each corner, so it looks like the sidewalk's actually bending or changing direction. Okay, so I think that's as far as we're going to take this drawing together anyway. Just like last time, however, I'm going to ask you guys to add something to this on your own. I'm going to be a little more specific this time though, because when I said that last time, sometimes people just added like something that wasn't really drawn in 3D or drawn in perspective. So you could put a window, but if you do a window, for it to count, it actually has to be recessed or drawn in perspective and look 3D. So don't just draw something that just had a single surface. It has to have like a three-dimensional appearance to it. So I'm going to pause now, add some things. You guys need to add some things on your own to get credit for this one too. I'm trying to do thumbs up, not thumbs down. Sorry. Guys, lastly, just like last time, I would like for you to indicate in the photograph which things you added on your own. So I added a lot of things here, and you can circle them or highlight them. I added this crosswalk. Notice that the crosswalk has to line up with this vanishing point on this side and this one. I added a little doorway. Added a whole nother building over here. Added like a little helicopter pad. The cool thing about this is it's real easy to see how you're when you're drawing something that's above your eye line here. Don't forget to keep your horizon in the picture this time. Even though it's mostly covered by buildings, here, here, and here. It isn't, so we need that ground in there, so keep that in there. But anyway, we're above the horizon line. You can see the underside here of this kind of helicopter pad above our line of sight. And then I also added my name here in perspective. Sometimes kids try to write something on the building and they just kind of go like, you know, like this or something, and it doesn't quite work out. It doesn't look like it's actually on the surface, so everything in the perspective world needs to kind of follow the rules of perspective. So the bottom edges and the top edges of my letters go towards the vanishing point, and the verticals are vertical. So you don't have to do this. I just thought it'd be cool if you wanted to make like a store and you wanted to make it look like the sign was on the surface of the building, how you could do that. But that's just kind of me flexing the proverbial artistic muscles, and by artistic muscles I of course mean your brain. So if this is frustrating to you guys, you know, take your time with it, be patient. People worked for thousands of years to come up with this technique, and in these times it looks like other artists like our friend Bob Ross are even frustrated and just kind of fed up with COVID-19. Here he is saying, now let's add a few little angry murder hornets just to really jazz it up, shall we? But back to what I was saying, Leonardo da Vinci here with the Last Supper painting was making an attempt at some one-point perspective, as you can see in the background here. This was done in 1495, so over 500 years ago. It's not a new concept. We're fortunate enough to have the path sort of paved or laid down before us by the artists who came before us. But we're kind of learning the things that they gave to us. Here's another one by another Renaissance artist. This one's done around 1510 by another Italian guy named Raphael. This one's called the School of Athens, but you can kind of see here he's got these curved arches, but nonetheless the little perspective orthogonals are laid on top of it for us. It kind of draws our attention to the kind of focal point, or the most important part, where these two philosophers are having their conversation here. So anyway, hope that helps. Give it a try. Upload to Schoology, and let's see what you got. Alright, the last thing I want to leave you guys with are some tips on taking the photograph of your drawing before you load it to Schoology. A bunch of them were kind of loaded in sideways like this, and I'm getting old and my neck's kind of getting sore because I got to turn my head kind of like this to be able to see your picture. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take the picture horizontally so I can actually see it the right way. It's a lot easier to look at it and see if it's done right. So if you're using an iPhone, probably Android works the same way. What you want to do is hold it like this first, then tip it sideways, then tip it flat. And that should result in a horizontal picture when you take it. However, if yours does not turn out horizontal like this, you can just go in and press Edit, and pretty much any editing app allows you to come in, hit the crop button, and then you just rotate it like that and say done, and then you guys should have a horizontal picture, hopefully not upside down like that. So if you ended up doing it like that, then you just have to hit the rotate button 2 more times to get it rotated correctly. Click done, and then boom, voila, you should have a picture that looks horizontal like that you turn in. A couple other photography tips I sometimes take for granted. Be aware of shadows, either your own shadow or other shadows cast by other things. Try not to have the shadows be on your picture. Some people also kind of were zoomed way back and you see like computers and other things around. Like the only thing you really want in the frame is your own picture. So crop it kind of close. Keep the camera flat and level or parallel to the surface that you're taking a picture on. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the lesson. Drop me a line or send me a message if you have any questions about it. Take care. Hope everybody's still healthy, feeling well, getting outside, enjoying springtime. And we're almost there guys, a couple weeks to go and we're done with this thing, so hang in there.